Good afternoon, Professor. This is Associate Professor Ho Kui, Program Director for Energy Technology R&D Program at A-Star, Singapore. And you're also the Center Director for Synergy. Yes. Well, good afternoon, and thank you for this interview.
Thank you.
I'd like to start by asking you about A-Star's Energy Research Program. Tell us why this is different and what made the government of Singapore and the research community here decide that we needed this program.
A-Star, as part of its tech scan, we call it a tech scan activity, and this was in conjunction with our science and technology planning for at that time was 2005 to 2010. We actually did a survey of the energy technology landscape and see where Singapore could possibly get involved in some of the areas. Knowing that we are a small country with limited resources and to put into R&D and so on, I think we tried to be focused in terms of identifying some of the areas that Singapore could go into. So that tech scan process involved representatives from A-Star, from the universities, and there were a few industry people as well as international people that we also consulted as part of that activity. Now, that took a period of about almost a year to come out with the final report. Energy was one of 12 areas that A-Star actually looked at under this science and technology planning effort. So under that, that was probably the first attempt in Singapore to try to define what could be, R&D directions for energy for Singapore to conduct. And in that report, we actually identified already some of the areas that today we are starting to work on a bit more.
So the scope and mandate of this research program was to map out Singapore's competitive edge in energy industry for the long term.
Well, not so much for the industry development point of view, but at that time it was more from an R&D perspective. But as you know, R&D supports industry development. But I would say that A-Star looks at it more from the technology development and R&D perspective rather than looking at it from the industry development perspective.
How much is the Singapore government going to invest in this effort? Especially with the A-Star Energy Research Program.
Yeah, quite a number of different initiatives, as you probably know. One of the big efforts is, of course, the Clean Energy Program under the NRF, which is hosted actually by EDB. EDB is taking care of that program. A-Star's own energy program, currently we are talking about a funding level of about maybe between $60 to $80 million over a 5-year period. And then I mentioned that Synergy Center has a separate funding. That is about a $38 million funding from a separate source, as it were.
So you're heading up two different research programs for the energy industry.
In some sense,
for the energy technology development.
Yeah, two different initiatives, but of course, since they are both covered by A-Star, and I'm sort of taking care of both of them at the moment. Of course, we try to make sure that they are aligned, together. But the difference is because one comes out of our R&D funds for A-Star, the other actually came out of, I don't know whether you heard of this term called the reinvestment fund that Singapore government sometimes make available for new initiatives, making use of some of the budget surpluses that actually are available from government. So this Synergy Center was actually proposed under that scheme, whereas the R&D program is using A-Star's R&D funding. Yeah.
Synergy will be an older program.
The name Synergy was actually a EDB program, but Synergy Center is in some sense a separate thing altogether. It's funded as a separate funding specifically for the center, development of the center. So Synergy Center is in fact newer than the A-Star Energy R&D program.
To merge these two programs instead of running them separately?
I think ultimately that is probably the best direction to go. Right now it's being done this way partly because of the different funding source. And the reason why it came like that was because Synergy Center was initially a EDB initiative, not a A-Star initiative. And EDB decided, after getting in-principle approval of this fund, to actually ask A-Star to implement it.
So we're looking at more than $100 million over the next 5 years.
Just from A-Star. Just from A-Star.
Okay.
Yeah, because the SIPO, the Clean Energy Program itself is another $130 million actually,
Right.
which are committing. Yeah.
And it's run by your office as well?
No, that is under EDB, the Clean Energy Program Office.
Right.
Yeah.
Understand. Now, tell us about the organizational setup of the A-Star Energy Research Program. Who do you report to, and how does this link in with all the other research programs? Also, your links with industry.
Okay, the A-Star Energy Program is also fairly new. We started off initially without having a formal program. What happened was individual activities were started in our research institutes. Take for example, bioenergy, for example. It has been an activity that has gone on in ICES for a number of years already, before the actual formalization of the energy program.
And that's on Jurong Island?
That's on Jurong Island. Similarly, in the area of fuel cells, for example, one of the research institutes, IMRI, has already been doing fuel cell work for at least 5 years prior to this program being started formally. So there were already activities going on, but it was only last year that A-Star decided to have a formal energy technology R&D program and to bring some of the activities together under a more coordinated, in a more coordinated way.
Will ISIS and IMRI and other agencies that are conducting their own areas of research eventually give up those research and pass all these activities over to your department?
The idea is that the program office will utilize the resources and the capabilities that are already in our research institute. So we are not necessarily going to get people together into a big energy research institute, for example. Instead, the program will try to pool these people to work on specific projects and activities, and drawing on the capabilities already there in the research institutes. Now, having said that, Synergy Center is going to be like a very small RI, focusing on certain aspects of energy technology, especially initially on the distributed energy and microgrid technologies, and trying to bring that closer to commercialization and to industrial applications sooner. So that is the closest that the energy activities and A-Star will have some kind of a center associated with it. Otherwise, it is more programmatic, drawing on the capabilities across the RIs. Now, I should mention that this is the current situation in A-Star, but moving forward, especially at SERC, the current thinking...
And SERC stands for?
And SERC stands for Science and Engineering Research Council, one of the two councils, the other one being the Biomedical Research Council. So at SERC, there is a lot of discussion now going on about how we should try to move away from an organization that is at the moment probably a bit too RI-centric, research institute-centric. So as you say, you have ICES, you have IMRI, you have SIMTEC and so on. And they are fairly independent research institutes, although they are under SERC, but they have their own executive director, they have their own legal status even actually at the present moment. Now, when we move to Fusionopolis, this will be actually...
when would that be?
And for the phase 1, we're going to move in July, August actually, so in a few months' time. Okay. Official opening for Fusionopolis phase 1 will be in October by the Prime Minister himself. So phase 1 will be the first phase of getting our research institutes actually into a physical location that is close together. So the first 2 research institutes that will move to Fusionopolis will be actually those related to the IT industry. They will be followed in a few years' time by the other research institutes, except for ICES, which will continue to be on Jurong Island. Yeah. So phase 2 construction has already started. It should be ready in about 3 years' time. And so eventually 6 of the 7 research institutes will be located at Fusionopolis.